often ends up being the butt of many jokes and the subject of many memes that have brought me countless hours of laughter over the years, I won't lie to you. And there's no sugarcoating it. The number of times that I have been driven around in a Nissan Altima far exceeds the number of times I've actually driven one. So now, having driven one for the last week, I can confidently say that Nissan has a product here that is a solid alternative to the established players, Honda Accord and Toyota Camry. The table that they all sit at, the family sedan table, it shrinks every single year. So Nissan thought it was best to now refresh the outside, update the tech on the inside, all while reducing the number of trims and configurations for you, the consumer, to make the process of choosing an Altima more simplified. Now, the top dog trim level is the SR with the VC turbo at $36,085. That's the car I've got right here. Let's take a closer look. The front end has a modified V-Motion grille. The border of the V-Motion itself is not as prominent as it was before. Now we've got more of a horizontal theme going on, especially on this SR trim where everything is blacked out. We've got the bright red SR badging there in the center, full LED headlights, DRLs, and turn signals up front. Things are a little bit worse in the back, but we'll get to that in just a second. But overall, I do like the refreshed look. It's a little bit cleaner, a little bit sportier looking, especially, of course, on the top of the line sporty SR trim. When this generation of Altima debuted in 2019, it was on the long end for the class. Of the competitors available at that time, only the long-in-the-tooth Chevy Malibu was longer in overall length. Now, fast forward to early 2023, we have the brand spanking new Honda Accord, the Kia K5, and still that Chevy Malibu that are all longer than the Altima. And that really places it right in the middle of the pack now, because back in 2019, there were a few more American-made sedans available in this class, as well as some competitors in other brands. So this segment, like I already said, is shrinking every year, putting this right in the middle in terms of size at 192.9 inches long with a 111.2 inch long wheelbase. These are the exclusive 19-inch wheels you get on the SR trim with the VC turbo. They are available as a dealer-installed accessory if you get the non-turbo SR trim, but that model actually has some really attractive-looking standard alloy wheels as well. So both of them are very nice looking for this trim level, and they fill the wheel wells really nicely. Again, 19 inches, and they ride on 235/40 Bridgestone Turanza tires. If there's one part of the Altima's design that I'm going to critique, it's going to be this rear end. For me, of all of the Nissan sedans that got this floating roof motif, I think the Altima's is the least successful. I don't know why, but it just looks like it was more of a last-minute thought for the design team, whereas the other sedans, it was deliberately included in their design processes. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section below. It's still not a bad look. I just think for some reason the C-pillar treatment is a little bit off for me. Otherwise, the rear end of the Altima still looks good. However, they did not take the opportunity to upgrade the lighting to LEDs. In fact, all of the lights back here are still incandescent bulbs. When it comes to driver assistance and safety, all Altimas come standard with automatic high beams, automatic emergency braking with audible alerts, blind spot monitor, a driver attention monitor, rear cross traffic alert with rear autonomous braking, and rear parking sensors. The Altima is available with things like a 360-degree surround view camera, traffic sign recognition, their Pro Pilot Assist adaptive cruise control, as well as lane departure warning, lane departure prevention, and lane tracing assist. All together, those are really going to help for those long highway cruises where there's those longer bends in the road or those curves that you want your car to stay centered for. The Altima, with all those features combined, just like they are in this trim right here, is a very nice highway cruiser. Under the hood of this Altima is Nissan's Unicorn 2-liter variable compression turbo 4-cylinder. It produces 236 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque, mated to front-wheel drive only, and with a 16.2-gallon fuel tank, you'll get about 29 miles per gallon combined. This right here is the engine that replaced the V6 in the Altima, and I think while for most people who don't really care too much about performance, this will be just fine. But honestly, most people aren't buying this one. That is why they've shrunk down the number of ways you can actually get a hold of one. And I just think it's not going to sound as good as a V6 is for those who like that sound. It's not going to have the same grunt, and of course pairing it with that CVT transmission makes it very unrefined sounding most of the time. The base engine for the Altima is a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder, making 188 horsepower, 182 pound-feet of torque. You can get that with front or all-wheel drive. Alex has a review of an all-wheel drive Altima, so go check that one out. This again is just front-wheel drive, but if you get all-wheel drive with that base 4-cylinder, you'll get 32 miles per gallon combined. If you get all-wheel drive, it'll bop down to 30 miles per gallon combined. I'm gonna have to give this Altima a 7 out of 10 for front seat comfort. They're not uncomfortable, but they're just soft and squishy and a little bit too plump in all the wrong spots for me. test one out for yourself to see what you think. Everyone else seems to rave about them, and even the Pathfinder I tested last year, they were more tolerable there. I don't know why, but I guess they vary between Nissan products. Anyway, even on this top SR trim, we have a different level of control for this seat as we do that seat. The driver has 10-way power adjustability with 2-way lumbar support. The passenger only has 4-way adjustability, no lumbar control whatsoever, but both seats are heated. We also have a heated steering wheel that is manually tilting and telescoping, but no two-person memory seats. There are some competitors that do offer things like that, and of course there is Infinity if you want to stay within the Nissan portfolio, but those are going to cost a little bit more and not give you the same size vehicle as a comparable midsize sedan in this class. For its 2019 redesign, Nissan decided to focus on rear seat space when they lengthened the car, and I'm definitely noticing that here. I have plenty of room below the waist. My knees have about 5 inches from the seat back where I was sitting. There's space under the front seat to wiggle your feet in there and warm them up a little bit, and then overall leg room is just very, very good. Now I'm at 5'9", so I'm not the tallest person, but I'm not the shortest, and if I put my head against the headrest there, I only have maybe 1 to 2 inches of headroom left, so that's one area where this could be a little bit better. There are some competitors that have even more swoopy profiles in this car that have more rear headroom, so that's somewhere I think that they could improve for next generation. But otherwise, the only thing I'm really missing back here is heated seats. There are no heated seats on this top trim, though we do have 2 air vents that can be shut or open, a USB-C port, a USB-A port, and 1 seat back pocket right here. Cargo space for the Altima is generally pretty generous at 15.4 cubic feet of space. There is storage under the floor as well as a spare tire. It is a compact spare, but there's also a jack and some other tools that you can access once you lift up the floor. So if you want a larger trunk, you might want to look elsewhere. But if you do need to expand the storage you do have in your Altima, you can fold down the second row seats with these levers right here. You pull this one for the left side to fold down, this one over here for the right side, but you do have to walk around to actually push the seat backs down. What did you expect? This isn't a crossover. Taking a look around the interior of the 2023 Nissan Altima, this is the new top trim, the SR trim. So if you like sporty and black interiors, then this will be perfect for you, but this is the only interior color option you can get. This black leather with the contrast stitching. On the SR trim, these are just heated. No ventilation is on offer at all for 2023. So if you're missing that feature, you're definitely gonna have to look elsewhere. We've got a height adjustable headrest, height adjustable seat belts over there, and these again are 4-way power adjustable seats. Over on the door panel, it's a mixture of materials. Up top, it's sort of a vinyl slash, I guess, faux leather wrapping, but it is pretty much hard plastic with a little bit of squish to it. That silver line there below that is metal, or at least appears to be real metal, because the handle itself has a cold touch to it and feels nice and solid. Just below that, we've got some hard plastics mixed in with a leather wrapping with that contrasting stitching you see right there. That adds a nice little bit of color pop, which is great. But below that, unfortunately, is a gloss black panel surrounding your window controls. So those will get scratches and fingerprints on them. Keep that in mind. And the rest of the door panel itself is all hard plastic down below. And to the left of that bottle holder is one of the speaker grills for the Bose premium audio system. It's not quite to the same level as the implementation in the Mazda products, but because we don't have a Mazda 6 sedan anymore, this is basically one of the best sound systems you'll hear in this family sedan segment. So if you're an audiophile like me, you'll definitely want to take a look at that. Then the rest of the dashboard is all pretty much dark colors. We have that middle section right there that is a sort of faux carbon fiber with a shiny finish, and then some black trim below that that connects to the air vents. Going down here, we have our glove box. It's actually decently sized, not the biggest, not the smallest, but as you can see, you can fit that pretty big owner's manual and a couple more inches of vertical space left there. And then front and center here is the biggest update for 2023 inside. This is the new large 12-inch infotainment system. It's all touchscreen. There is no rotary controller down below like it was in the Armada I just drove. This has an updated interface too. So if you go into the home screen, you've got widgets. So phone, audio, maps. These are the traditional onboard maps you've pretty much seen from Nissan for a long time, maybe just slightly updated for this model year. But luckily, if you don't want to use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, you can use Google destinations, or I guess Google search-based destinations. You can type them in or do voice control there. So that does bring the internet connectivity back into play just a little bit. You do have to tether your phone to get the results, sort of similar to how Toyota's audio multimedia system works. But I assume most of you are going to be using Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. And that looks like this. As you can see, Android Auto puts the maps all the way across to the right. I don't have the latest Android Auto update with the new Cool Walk user interface. So as soon as I have that update, I will put out a video on that for you guys. But for now, we still have the old Android Auto software, but I do like that it does fit the full width of the screen. It does look pretty elegant. Nissan has retained all of the physical buttons we had before, so we have the day and night screen mode to give you that dim look or the bright look, your track forward and backward, volume knob with the power button, and this is your camera system. So if you have a top trim like this, you will get the surround view camera. There's nothing over there. It's only going to be here and here that gives you your bird's eye view there and your actual backup camera view right there. Pushing that button again gives you a side view like so, and pushing it one more time turns it off completely. And of course, if you shift into reverse, it'll also engage. Then below that, we have your HVAC controls. This is a dual zone automatic climate control. We have your heated seat for the driver, heated seat for the passenger. It's just 2 settings. So 1, 2, and then 1 for the steering wheel. So if you heat the steering wheel, it's just 1 on or off. And then of course 2 for the other seat. And the rest of this is laid out simply. It works well. I like that they've kept this and not made you rely on a touchscreen. Below that is where your Qi wireless charge pad is, and that is working just fine right now with my Google Pixel 6 Pro. You've got a USB-C port and a USB-A port and a carport jack, or whatever you want to call these cigarette-style outlets like this. Then below that we have your traditional shifter. It's not really gated, but it does come back fully to the low gear and then goes back fully to the park gear. And this is all piano black plastic around here. So again, scratches and fingerprints are already showing up all over this stuff. I don't love that. I wish they would get away from this, but at first it does look pretty elegant. Storage underneath the armrest is average for the class. The opening itself is actually pretty large, but it's not super deep. So I have this laying down flat. This is one of the smaller types of Purell bottles. You really can't stand it up in here because it's not tall enough to clear the bottom of the lid. So if you were to close that, it would squirt out some hand sanitizer. So, you know, not a big deal, but something to note. Then up here we have controls for your interior lighting. We also have, what I love, a sunglass holder, and then your controls for your power moonroof and your emergency SOS function right there. The moonroof is a standard size. There is no panoramic option available, but I love having one either way. Here is your Nissan steering wheel. This is the same design we've been seeing since about 2018 or so. It's got a very sporty look and it feels nicely leather wrapped. The leather is supple and it does heat up really quickly when you turn on that heated wheel. Over on the left here, we have controls for what's going on in the instrument cluster. Up here on the right here, we have some cruise control and Pro Pilot Assist buttons, your voice command and your hanging up of the phone button. In the middle here, there is no stitching or anything. This is just a hard plastic covering. And this is a flat bottom steering wheel, which of course goes along with the SR's sporty pretense. And there's still some orange accented stitching right there. So this is a really nice steering wheel. It's also a really, really nice size. It's not too big and not too small. There are also paddle shifters, so if you want to shift that continuously variable transmission, shift the transmission, you can do that here, and they actually respond pretty quickly to your input, so that's a nice surprise. And then further in here is your instrument cluster, which did not get a full LCD treatment for 2023. I would have liked to see the Nissan Rogue's full LCD instrument cluster available, even on this top trim, but we don't get it at all. If you've been in a modern Nissan, this will be very familiar to you. Pretty much the same exact screens you get on everything else that has this, including the Armada I just had. There is no head-up display though, even on this top trim, so if you're looking for that feature, you're definitely going to have to look at the competition. Then over here on the left of the steering wheel, we have more controls for various functions. That turns off the steering assist. This opens your trunk. That's obviously the lighting for the instrument cluster, and that resets your trip computer. Out on the road, the Altima is actually a very pleasant place to be. It's until you need to do a 0 to 60 run that things get a little bit interesting. Now keep in mind, as you can see, it's been a pretty snowy winter in Detroit this month so far, so the roads have not been quite as dry as I'd like to do 0 to 60 testing, but in 2 times in a row, I got 6.33 seconds. So there are definitely cars in the segment that are faster, and of course that's not exactly the most fair number to show you, but 6.33 is what I got. And that's really, it's quick enough. It's just the car doesn't like to be accelerated from a stop. And the reason for that is the CVT transmission. From a stop, if you floor this thing, there's always a second or two of delay where the car has some shyness to get over. Then it finally decides to give you that oomph you're looking for, and things are smooth sailing until the transmission decides to be inconsistent again, at which point it can't decide whether it should drone on like a CVT or it should shift like a true automatic. It's a very inconsistent and somewhat of an unrefined experience. This car's power is best tapped into when you're already rolling down the road at 25 to 45 miles per hour. If you do give it some gas then, The transmission seems to have things under control a lot better. And the CVT, like I've already mentioned, does have paddle shifters, and they do respond quickly to your inputs. However, the transmission still has a mind of its own. If it doesn't think you should be in that simulated fourth gear, it is going to shift out of that. So it's not the most engaging in terms of manually shifted automatic transmissions, but that's what you get for choosing a car to CVT. So the Altima's brakes have been impressive this week though, and again, we don't have dry roads here in Michigan right now, so the number that I've been getting for my 60 to 0 testing is around 135 feet. So that's definitely longer than what you should expect to get in a dry pavement situation. The brakes in the Altima are actually quite good. The brake power itself feels very linear and smooth. The pedal itself has little to no dead travel at the top, so there really are no complaints there. Again, wintry Michigan roads means I haven't been able to give you the most reliable braking number, but it took 135 feet for me to get this Altima to stop from 60 miles per hour back to 0. When it comes to handling and driving the car more spiritedly, this car really enjoys being tossed around town and driven in a more exciting way. The chassis itself is very firm and very rigid. It's almost German-like compared to the other Japanese competitors and the other Korean competitors. This whole structure feels very firm and very well screwed together. The interior itself, all the materials and pieces seem tightly screwed together, so you never feel any creaking, any sort of bending, any give, any sort of structural or lack of structural integrity in this car. So that's why it makes it feel like you can really drive this car a lot faster than you should be. And thanks to that turbo, you can do it much easier in this Altima than most other Altimas out there. Like the transmission, the steering is another interesting area for the Altima because there's nothing really standoutish or bad about it. It just becomes much heavier when you're at higher speeds. If you're around town, it's pretty easy to steer this thing. It's pretty light. There's always a tiny bit of communication coming through the wheel, but it's never going to be more than the average sedan in this class. One example of that would be if you're exiting the highway onto one of those cloverleaf style exits and you're still taking a pretty high rate of speed, the steering just gets super heavy. You really have to actually fight it if you want it to do something different than what you were already planning on doing. I don't know if it's due to faulty equipment or the fact that I'm just a little crazy. I don't know what it is, but the same measuring tool I use to measure cabin noise got me 55 decibels in this cabin at 50 miles per hour. That is way lower than it probably should be. I don't know what's up with that. We'll have to get you an updated number if I do find one, but it is quiet in here, don't get me wrong. There's a little tiny bit of road noise, but wind noise is well subdued, and yeah, it's a very serene cabin. I know I haven't talked too much in detail about the ins and outs of that variable compression turbo. However, I think it does its magic when it comes to fuel economy. I've been getting around 27 miles per gallon combined, and on my official test loop, I got closer to 33. So fuel economy is not exactly a bad part of this experience. Time to summarize my findings on the 2023 Nissan Altima, starting with the things I really liked. The vault-like ride quality. This car does not flex, it doesn't bend, it doesn't creak, it doesn't rattle. It's very solidly constructed and has a very sporty and almost German feel to it behind the wheel. It also has a really quiet interior, and that's especially noticeable out on the highway, where the CVT does keep RPMs pretty low when you're cruising along, and in general, it's just a very hushed cabin, so that's very welcome. Also, not on the particular model that I was testing, but the Altima does offer all-wheel drive if you need it. So if you're in the snow belt or if you're up north and you're gonna get a lot of inclement weather and you want that all-wheel drive peace of mind, the Altima has that available. Plus, interior space is commendable. It's not the largest cabin in the class, but it is near the top and you definitely feel it as a passenger, especially in that second row. The variable compression turbo definitely makes you happy that you chose it over the base naturally aspirated engine because it provides good power. Now, how it provides the power, we'll get to in a second. The zero gravity front seats are marketed as these super comfy seats that really coddle every person that sits in them and makes them feel like they're floating or whatever the jargon is. For me, in this particular application, they weren't that great. So of course, test drive one, sit in one for yourself, see what you think. Because as we'll see in a second, the top end price of a fully loaded Altima is not far off the top price of a fully loaded Kia K5 or Honda Accord, and those might offer some features you can't get here. And lastly, the biggest thorn in the Altima's side is that CVT transmission. As you've already heard me say, and as you've heard many other people say, it really holds back this engine and holds back really any engine that it goes into. In this application, it's a little inconsistent and it's a little wonky. Now on the pricing. As you can see on the screen, the Nissan Altima is not exactly the least expensive entry in the segment. A Subaru Legacy starts at a lower price point, $25,415. The Altima at $26,385 does give you a lot of standard safety features and a solid design and a pretty comparable base engine to what you'll find in all of these models. In fact, the Accord and the Legacy have similar outputs in their base engine, and the K5 as well, but the K5 is turbo only. You're only going to get a 1.6 turbo base engine, whereas these are naturally aspirated base engines. Now also when it comes to upgraded engines, the most powerful option here is going to be that K5 GT. It has 290 horsepower and over 310 pound-feet of torque, whereas the Altima is down closer to 260, 267 and all that, and that's also where the Subaru Legacy's turbocharged Boxer 4 engine also comes in. It's right around 260 horsepower or so. The Accord, however, for 2023, which is the newest in the bunch, we literally just drove it, it's not going to have nearly as much power in its upmarket engine. Its top performance number is 204 horsepower from its hybrid engine. So if you want performance, the Accord is no longer an option because they got rid of the 2-liter turbo for it. So if you want power, Altima and Legacy and K5 will offer it. You'll just get more from the K5. Now the Legacy, though, it is sort of on the stale side in terms of just how interesting of a car it is, and it always has had that persona. It has a pretty nice interior with a very cool, unique layout for the segment, but its interface is not as intuitive or snappy as the other ones you'll find here. The Accord has what I would call the most modern infotainment system. If you get the very most expensive model, it'll have Google integration, Google built-in, Google or Android Automotive. So if you want that kind of system, the Accord will offer it. But the Altima's interface has been refreshed this year, as we've already talked about, and it is a solid update with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So as I've said before, what more could you really want? Of course, as always, check out these cars in person for yourself if you're trying to decide between one. We're here to help as much as we can, but it's all about the in-person experience. Thank you so much as always for watching. I appreciate your view, so does Alex. Make sure to follow us on all of our social channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, as well as the Alex on Auto's website for the written reviews, the Auto Buyer's Guide podcast, and the EV Buyer's Guide channel. Until next time, take care.